Good evening, everyone. So tonight we're hitting the climax of the story, and then we're going to see the resolution. So last time we left off, Joseph is in Egypt, and he's come to the height of his authority. He's working for the Pharaoh, and he did a good job organizing everything, as we've seen him do many times before. And now they're in the years of famine, and we're going to see what's happening with the brothers. We're going to go back to them. When Jacob learned, this is chapter 42, Genesis 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at one another? I have heard," he said, "that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that what harm might come to him. Thus the sons of Israel were among the other peoples who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold all the people of the land. It was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them as strangers and spoke harshly with them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had dreamt about them. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said, "Why, we, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is just as I have said to you, you are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. Or else, as Pharaoh lives, surely you are the spies." And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here where you are imprisoned. The rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your household, and bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your word will be verified, and you shall not die." And they agreed to do so. They said to one another, "Alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this anguish has come upon us." Then Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them, and he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to return every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. This was done for them. So as the brothers say, this is like a complete reversal of the fortune. So first of all, they're fulfilling the dream of Joseph. Now, of course, the irony is, if they had never done their deeds, the dream wouldn't have been fulfilled. And so it's even prophetic that if you remember the dream, they were all boughs of wheat that were bowing down. And now what do? They've come down and bow before him because they need wheat, because they need food. And so it's that complete reversal of fortunes. And you notice even Joseph's words, the nakedness of the land. So he thinks that they're spies coming to see if they really do have food or not. And the nakedness, of course, their land isn't, well, it's somewhat naked because the famine is everywhere. But again, think of the nakedness the nakedness of Joseph when they stripped his coat with the long sleeves. So it's that reflection of them. And just as he was thrown into the pit, so now they were thrown into the pit. And so it's come full circle. And it's so much that they realize it too. Even to the point too, the fact that Benjamin's not there, of course he's being held back by Jacob because he's the favorite. But at the same time, Benjamin wasn't there. So Benjamin isn't going to get mistreated because he wasn't part of the conspiracy against Joseph. So they perfectly get their comeuppance. And again, it's in that God's irony, in that like perfect way of it. They get their comeuppance through their own actions are coming to fruition. They got mad at him because they didn't want to bow down to him about with these boughs of wheat, and now they have to bow down to him, and they don't even realize it. They loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed. When one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money at the top of the sack. He said to his brothers, "My money has been put back here in my sack." At this they lost heart and turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly to us and charged us with spying on the land. But he said to them, 'We are honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, 'By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me. Take grain for the famine to your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, and I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will release your brother to you, and you may trade in the land.' As they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was his bag of money." This is going to come back to play. Now, they were nervous about that because they could get accused of stealing. So the money was to pay for the grain, and now they have the money and the grain. Now, this is, of course, Joseph. He can't bring himself to charge his own brothers. But in their minds, they're like, oh, they might think they're really going to think we're spies. And this is going to come back later when we see Benjamin go down. When they and their fathers saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. And the father Jacob said to them, "I am the one you have bereaved. I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin? All this has happened to me." Then Reuben said to his father, You may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should come to him on the journey, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to Sheol." Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten up all the grain that they had brought from Egypt, the father said to them, "Go again, buy us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' Israel said, 'Why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother?' They replied, 'The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, "Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?" What we told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, "Bring your brother down"? Then Judah said to his father, Israel, "Send the boy with me, and let us be on our way, so that we may live and not die. You and we are also, and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. You can hold me accountable for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If you had not delayed, we would now have returned twice." So remember that the subplot of the rivalry between Reuben and Judah. And we see this play out again. And so Reuben says, "You can kill my 2 sons if I don't bring him back." And that's not very pleasant. What grandfather wants to kill his own grandsons? And so Judah takes it on himself. And now we've seen Judah, if you remember Judah and Tamar, Judah is very honest. You got to give him credit for that, when he takes credit for what it is. So he's pretty blunt, and he's with Jacob. He's like, "We have to do this. We don't have a choice. We're going to die if we don't." And when he said, "Well, why did you tell him?" He's like, "We were being honest." And more than that, because Joseph knows if they had lied, he would have known it. He would have known they were lying. So it's doubly good that they were honest. That's one of the things that saved them. That, when we saw Joseph weeping when their brothers were being honest, when he was listening to them, that's because he had seen that their hearts had changed. And so the fact that they were honest saves them. So it's a good thing. So this is a good part for Judah. And also he steps up himself. Instead of saying, "Here, take my sons," no, take me. You can put it on me. It's more of that bravery and more of that standing up for himself. So it's a good one. This is a good sign for Judah. And again, showing that leadership. Then their father Israel said to them, If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bag and carry them down as a present to this man, a little balm and a little honey, gum, resin, pistachio, nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the top of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also, and be on your way again and to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he may send back your other brother and Benjamin. As for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. So the men took the present, and they took double the money with them, as well as Benjamin. Then they went on their way down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. Then Joseph saw Benjamin with them. He said to the steward of his house, "Bring the men into the house, and slaughter an animal, and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph said, and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, "It is because of the money replaced in our sacks the first time that we have been brought in, so that we may have an opportunity to fall upon us, to make slaves of us, and take our donkeys." So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the entrance of the house. They said, "O my lord, we came down the first time to buy food, and when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each one's money at the top of the sack. Our money is full weight, so we have brought it back with us. Moreover, we have brought down with us additional money to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." So this is another time of being honest. So he gave them an opportunity to be honest again. So remember, this started with not only the betrayal, but then the lie. They ripped up the coat, they dipped it in blood, and they lied about Joseph being murdered. So now we're flipping, and now the brothers are being honest. So it's that juxtaposition, and so it's that beautiful thing. So it's, again, they've not necessarily learned their lesson from that directly, but you can see them, they're being sorrowful, and they're better men. They are better men now. We can say that, and here's an example. He replied, "Rest assured, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. That when the steward had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when they had given their donkey fodder, they made the present ready for Joseph, coming at noon, for they had heard that they would dine there. When Joseph came home, they brought him the present, and they had carried into the house, and bowed to the ground before him. He inquired about their welfare. He said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads and did observance. Then he looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother, of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." With that, Joseph hurried out, because he was overcome with affection for his brother, and he was about to weep. So again, you can just see this as like a movie scene. Just imagine like they come in and like he sees Benjamin, and it looks like his mom, who he hasn't seen and has passed away, and all this other kind of stuff, and you can see he's having that like Egyptian makeup, and there's a tear in the corner, and it's smudging the black makeup around his eye, and it's a scene. This is, again, it's that beautiful story that these are meant to be stories. They're meant to be entertained, and they have these high points. These are, along with the virtue tales, they're also just good stories and good literature. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, "Serve the meal." They served him by himself, and then by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. When they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. So this is a nice little, again, reversal of fortunes kind of thing. So Benjamin's getting more, even though he's the smallest. So a little bit of that, the last shall be first kind of thing. And of course, in the story, it comes into play because it's his full brother and the one who did not betray him, and the reminder of his mother. And so it's this nice little connection. Then he commanded the steward of his house, "Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the top of the sack. Put my cup, the silver cup, in the top of the sack of the youngest, and his money for the grain." And he did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. When they had gone only a short distance from the city, Joseph said to his steward, "Go follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you returned evil for good? Why have you stolen my silver cup? It is not from this that my Lord drinks. Does he not indeed use it for divination? You have done wrong in doing this.' When he overtook them, he repeated these words to them. They said to him, 'Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants that they should do such a thing. Look, the money that we found at the top of the sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. Why then would we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Should it be found with any of your servants, let him die.' Dun, dun, dun. Moreover, the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves." He said, "Even so, in accordance with your word, let it be. He with whom it is found shall become my slave, but the rest of you shall go free." Then each one lowered his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. He searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this they tore their clothes. Then each one loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. So a quick note, I don't know if we've seen this before, with the tearing of the clothes. You see that a lot. Why that's so important is clothes are really, really expensive. So right after like silver and gold, That's like the next most valuable thing, because at the time, of course, it's very painstaking to make any of these things. And that's why, like, when they put on sackcloth, there's a big difference. So there's really nice to have linen cloth or some of those nicer things. That's why we saw the jacket was such a nice thing, his long sleeve tunic, because it's really hard to do that. So to tear your cloth is like to show how much distressed you are, because it's never going to be able to be repaired in the same way. And so that's why. And so then you also see, like, when they list the valuables of, like, Solomon, it's like gold and silver and linen, and you're like, and then you're like, what that destroys? You're like, rust destroys things. And they'll also say the moth. That's why the moth is such a good symbol of destruction, because it eats the very valuable cloth. So if you were ever wondering about that. Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house while he was still there, and they fell on the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that one such as I can practice divination?" And Judah said, "What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Here we are then, my Lord's servant. Both we and also the one in possession of the cup has been found." But he said, "Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the one who is in possession of the cup was found shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father." So again, he's giving them a chance to abandon a brother. That's what he's doing. He's giving them an out. Let's see how they're going to take it. Let's see how they have a brother who messed up, or at least seems like he messed up like Benjamin. In the same way, Joseph wasn't perfect. He was a little braggadocious. Let's see how the brothers handle it this time. Last time they betrayed their brother. This time it's going to be better. Then Judah stepped up to him. Again, Judah takes the lead and said, "O my Lord, let your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ears, and do not be angry with your servant. For you are like Pharaoh himself." My Lord asked his servant, saying, "Have you a father or a brother?" And he said to my Lord, "We have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me, so that I may set my eyes on him.' We said to my Lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die.' Then you said to your servant, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see me face to face.' When he went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, 'Go again, buy a little food,' we said, 'We cannot go down, only if our youngest brother goes with us. Will we go down? For we cannot see this man's face unless our youngest brother is with us.' Then your servant, my father, said to us, 'You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm comes to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in sorrow to Sheol. Now, therefore, when I go to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, when he sees that his boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servants, our father, with sorrows to Sheol. For your servant became surety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame in the sight of my father all my life. Now therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave to my brother, as a slave to my Lord in place of the boy, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the suffering that would come upon my father." So Judah is now taking the place. So this is the second time we've seen Judah saying, you can take me. He's willing to be the victim. He's willing to be that substitute. And so again, that strength. And so this is a big conversion. So last time Judah was the one who suggested selling him into slavery. And now we see him willing to become a slave. Again, that full reversal. He was willing to sell his brother into slave. Now he's willing to become a slave, to prevent his brother from being a slave. So beautiful juxtaposition on that. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him. When Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he went so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, so dismayed were they in their presence. Again, you can see this in the movie. Like, he takes off the Egyptian head garb, and he's like, "It's me," and oh, and all that kind of stuff. This is the climax. This is the climax of the story right here, the revelation and the unity coming back. The rest of this is following action. We know it's going to turn out good now. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. He said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall settle in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, as well as your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there, since there are 5 more years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have will not come to poverty. And now your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my own mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father how greatly I am honored in Egypt, and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, while Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that his brothers talked with him. Then the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, "Joseph's brothers have come." Pharaoh and his servants were pleased. Now compare this to, again, what we've seen already in Exodus, where we're going to see that, remember, it starts off with he forgets Joseph and his brothers and what they did. So this is, again, he's at that high point. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do this. Load your animals and go back to the land of Canaan. Take your father with your household and come to me, so that I may give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you may enjoy the fat of the land. You are further charged to say, 'Do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Give no thought of your possessions, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours.' The sons of Israel did so. Joseph gave them wagons according to the instructions of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. To each one of them he gave a set of garments. Remember, clothes are valuable. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 sets of garments. To his father he sent the following: 10 donkeys loaded with good things of Egypt, the 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provisions for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers on their way, and as they were leaving, he said to them, 'Do not quarrel along the way.' So they went out of Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. And they told him, Joseph is still alive. He is even ruler over all the land of Egypt. He was stunned. He could not believe them. But then they told him that the words of Joseph that he had said to them, and then he said the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Israel said, enough, my son Joseph is still alive. I must go and see him before I die. Okay. Just trying to see if we want to, well, we're not going to get through this all tonight, but we're going to go a little bit farther. Then Israel set out on his journey with the land, with all that he had, and he came to Beersheba. He offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. And Joseph's own hand shall close your eyes. Then Jacob set out from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel called their father Jacob, their little ones and their wives, in the wagon that Pharaoh had sent to carry them. They also took their livestock and their goods, and they had accompanied in the land of Canaan, and they came into Egypt, Jacob and all his offspring with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his offspring. He brought them into Egypt. Now these are the names of the Israelites, Jacob and his offspring. Okay, we're going to skip all the names. It's all the names, just all the names. So it's there. So you're seeing the foundation of the nations. And, they do it by tribe and clan, and they have these kind of high system of doing this. So, of course, you have the 12 tribes, and then each one has sub-tribes based on the splitting up of that. And that's why you'll hear he was of this ite, and everyone has an ite because there's clans within clans within clans. So the tribe is the big one, and then there's clans going down. But we don't need to read all the names, but there's a lot. So we're going to go up, and we're going to go up to Goshen. So we're going to go up to verse 28. Israel sent Judah ahead to Joseph to lead his way before him into Goshen. Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet his father Israel in Goshen. He presented himself to him, fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. Israel said to Joseph, I can die now, having seen for myself that you are still alive. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and I will say to him, my brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds, and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you, and he says, what is your occupation? You shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youths, even until now, both we and our ancestors, in order that you may settle in the land of Goshen, because all shepherds are abhorrent to the Egyptians. So he's trying to get them, this is that little subplot. If you remember, there's always that rivalry between cattle herders and sheep herders. We saw that a little bit. And so the Egyptians are big cattle herders and they're sheep herders. And this goes along with how the two different things, how the sheep versus cattle eat grass. And so they're not easy to keep on the same land. This was even a big thing in the United States. We get cowboys. There were battles fought between shepherds and cow herds back in the West. And this goes a ways back. So he's like, listen, they don't like shepherds. Just keep it vague. Say you raise livestock. You want to start with a good impression. He's just trying to be he's not saying lie, but he's just saying, let's be clever here. So Joseph went and told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers with flocks and herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen, From among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, and are as our ancestors were." Well, that didn't last long. They didn't really follow the advice there, so that wasn't too clever of them. "We have come to reside as aliens in the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, because the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now he asks you, let your servants settle in the land of Goshen." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers for the best part of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen, and if you know where there is capable men among them, put them in charge of my livestock." So his fears were kind of for naught, and I think this is actually a leaning towards, again, the honesty is the best policy. So I think this is their bluntness, and it doesn't say who specifically, but again, the Judah's bluntness and being honesty. I think this was Joseph being a little overly worried that he didn't need to be, and maybe showing even a sign that he's been in Egypt for a little too long. But you could read that, and I've seen that read different ways. Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and presented him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many are the years of your life?" Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my earthly sojourn are 130. Few and hard have been the years of my life. They do not compare with the years of the life of my ancestors during their long sojourn." Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence to Pharaoh. Joseph settled his father and his brothers and granted them a holding in the land of Egypt, in the best part of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had instructed. And Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and his father's household with food according to the number of their dependents. Okay. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to hit some highlights for the rest of this, because I want to finish this tonight, because we're really close to being done. So if this was a movie, it would end right here. If it was a movie, it'd be like, okay, they're all together, they're happy. But since we got to hear the full story, this is the kind of the last little bits of details. So the famine continues in Egypt, but they're now able to outlast it and have it. And then we have the Jacob and kind of the last Jacob's and his passing. And the final bit and the most important bit is this last words to his sons. And Jacob gives a blessing to all of his sons. And it's going to be a little bit of a reflection of what's to come. And so we see, it's this big thing. So we're going to skip to chapter 49. We're going to read this because this is kind of interesting. Then Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather around that I may tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Assemble and hear, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, by might and my first fruits of my vigor, excelling in rank and excelling in power. Unstable as water, you shall no longer excel, because you went up on to your father's bed, and then you defiled it. You went up on my couch." So if you remember, he had an affair with one of Jacob's wives. And so this is like, okay, this shows the unstableness that he has. So you're unstable as water. You're really powerful, but you're unstable. So Reuben will never be the leader that you would think he would be, being the firstborn. "Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. May I never come into their counsel. May I not be joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and at their whim they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel." So this is going back to remember that time when they kind of killed all the men from that one village after one of them had raped their sister. So he's kind of calling back that moment. So he's like, you're too angry. This is kind of like the fatherly lasting advice, like, calm down kind of thing. So you're too angry. Don't do that. So Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the necks of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, your son, you have gone up. He crouches down, he stretches out like a lion, like a wilderness, who dares rouse him up? So have you ever heard the term Lion of Judah? That's where this comes from, the Lion of Judah, and Judah being a lion, so being a leader, being powerful. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. The scepter or mace is a symbol of kingship, and it's a symbol of power. So they even have this in the Middle Ages. If you see ever the picture of like the king, and he has this like fancy staff thing with a little ball on the end, it's the mace or the scepter, and it's just a symbol of authority and kingship. And so the fact that the scepter shall not pass from him, showing that he's going to have, again, that leadership role. Until tribute come to him, and the obedience of the people in this, binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choicest vine. He washes his garments in wine, and his robe in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. So this is basically just showing the authority and the power that's going to happen in Judah. And of course, we're going to see that climax when this splits. So all the 10 tribes are going to go, there's going to be 10 tribes on one side and basically Judah. And Judah is going to be, when we see the split between Judah and Israel, Judah, even though it's just one tribe, is about as much as the other 10 combined. So you can see how one kind of assumes the other. And this, even if you think about this even kind of exists in the church today. We have the Roman Catholic Church, which is about 90% of the church, but we have all the other little churches too, like the Byzantines and the other kind of things too. And so you have, this tends to be one becomes the dominant one, and then you have some other offshoots and that kind of stuff. And it's good that you have both, but sometimes that you just do have that one dominant one. Zebulun shall settle at the shore of the sea. He shall be a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon, which is North Israel. And so this is also just a prediction of where they're going to be in Israel, and this is where the tribes will settle. Issachar is a strong donkey lying between two sheep folds. He saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulder to the burden and became a slave at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels, so that its riders fall backwards. I wait for the salvation, O Lord. Gad shall be raided by raiders, but he shall raid at their heels. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall provide royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears lovely fawns. So all of these things are like, it's basically what's going to be the stereotype of that group for various things. So like, oh, this one's going to be tricky, so it's a viper, so they're probably going to have this reputation for being tricky and that kind of stuff. And this one's going to be this. So that's kind of like all these setting up the stereotypes and setting up the precedent for what they're going to be. I don't know all the references, what this means, but for some, like, I don't know lovely fawns. I don't know what that means. I'm sure the Israelites knew it. I'm sure it's like a reference like we would make today that would be that we would all understand, but I'll admit I don't know these ones. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers fiercely attack him. They shot at him and pressed him hard. Yet his bow remained taut, and his arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, by the name of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, by the God your father, who will help you, by the Almighty, who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lie beneath, blessings of your breast and of the womb. The blessings of your father are stronger than the blessings of the eternal mountains, the bounties of the everlasting hills. They may be on the head of Joseph, on the boughs with him that is set apart from his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, and in the evening dividing the spoil. So in these ones, you see that Joseph is going to be the other big one. So you have Judah, who got a big blessing, and now Joseph gets the other big blessing. And again, it shows his strength and his power. And Joseph will be, through Issachar and Manasseh, will be the center of the other 10. So while Judah becomes one big one, Joseph kind of is the rallying point for the other 10 tribes and will be kind of that representation when Israel when they split. There's one final blessing with where he has the blessings for his sons. Let me see if I'm missing this. Okay, then he charges them not to bury them in Egypt, and so that then we'll see that we saw that come to fruition where they carry his bones out of Egypt and they bury him in the Holy Land when they get. Just trying. Oh, here it is. We're going to go back a little bit. Go back to 48, because we're going to see this. After this, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill," so he took with him the two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And remember, Manasseh and Ephraim are going to be the half-tribes, where Joseph isn't going to be fully represented. You're going to have both of them kind of achieve tribe status. Has come to you, and I'm going to skip down to 5. Therefore, your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt, before I came with you to Egypt, are now mine. So he's claiming them. So even though they're Egyptian and they're born in Egypt, he's going to claim them and say, no, they're full Israelites. They shall be recorded under the names of their brothers with regard to their inheritance. For when I came from Paddan, Rachel, alas, died in the land of Canaan on the way, while they were still some distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there. Then Israel saw Joseph's sons. He said, "Who are these?" Joseph said to his father, "These are my sons, whom God has given me there." And he said, "Bring them to me, so that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, and he could not see well. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, "I did not expect to see your face, and here God has let me see your children also." Then Joseph removed them from his father's knees, and he bowed himself and his face to the earth. Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel's left, and Manasseh in his left hand towards Israel's right, and brought them near him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. He blessed Joseph and said, "The God before you, whom my ancestors Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd to all the life of his day, the angels, and has redeemed me from all harm, bless the boys, and in them let my name be perpetuated, and the name of the ancestors, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude on the earth." Then Joseph saw that his father's laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim. It displeased him, so he took his father's hands to remove it from Ephraim's head and Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, "No, not so, my father. Since this one is the firstborn, put your right hand on his head." But his father refused, and he said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, this younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them and said to them, "By you, Israelite will invoke blessings, saying, God makes you like Ephraim and like Manasseh." So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your ancestors. I now give you one portion more than your brothers, the portion that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with your bow." So he's establishing that they're both going to get to be their own tribes, and he makes the younger ahead of the brother, the older. And of course, we've seen this with Jacob. We saw this with Isaac and Esau. Now I'm going to mix up the names, with Jacob and Esau, and Isaac with, you know who I'm talking about. There's too many older brothers who get. So this is going to be that flip. And we'll see this play out because Manasseh, the older, will be one of the tribes that settles on the other side of the Jordan with Reuben. And so it's kind of that same idea of play, that the oldest doesn't, even though the oldest should be, the oldest isn't always the one that gets played out. And of course, we'll see this again with David. We'll see this a couple times, that God works through the unexpected ones very frequently. So then it ends, and we're going to end with Jacob dies, and they bury him. They promise to take his bones up. Then Joseph forgives his brothers. This is 50:15. Realizing that his father was dead, Joseph's brothers said, "What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the wrongs that we did to him?" So they approached Joseph, saying, "Your father gave his instructions before he died. Say to Joseph, I beg you, forgive the crimes of your brothers and the wrongs they did in harming you. Now, therefore, please forgive the crimes of your servants, of the God of your father." Joseph wept then when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also wept, fell down before him, and said, "We are here as your slaves." But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good, in order to preserve a numerous people, as he is doing today. So have no fear. I myself will provide for you and your little ones." In this way he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived for 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, and the children of Machir's son of Manasseh were also born to Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely come to you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." So Joseph made the Israelites swear, saying, "When God comes to you, you shall carry up my bones from here." And Joseph died, being 110 years old. He was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. Okay, so that's going to be the end. So that's where we stop for the night. And so, of course, now everyone's kind of where they need to be for then. Of course, we've already done Exodus, so we know what's coming next. And so it starts again with the Pharaoh forgetting Joseph. And so it's all this kind of led up. So this whole starting of Genesis is now God has established a nation. He did it through these people, all leading up to this point. So now they're in Egypt, and then in 400 years, they're going to go from being just like a family to a true nation with the 12 tribes, a nation of people. And so it's that next step. And then, of course, from Exodus, we're going to go to Joshua, and then we're going to see them conquer the Holy Land. And after that, we're going to see them there's the transition from a nation to a state, where they have their own land, and they have their own government, and they have their own rules and regulations and all that kind of stuff. So each step is making them more and more and more larger, and each covenant that they form becomes larger. Okay, that's enough for me talking for one night. Let's end in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. As in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end, amen. Good night, everybody, and God bless.